Hello, welcome back to the Next Gen Rugby podcast. We are, about a week, 10 days on from our Premiership Rugby draft. Will Roberts is still sulking about us laughing at him about his selection of scrum half, but fortunately, Wilf Kemsley's still here. How are you doing, Wilf?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Really into the season now. It has officially started. When the Scottish schools kicked off, there started to be an uptick in the engagement, but that 10 to watch sort of popped off massively. People are really keen to know what's going on. People are getting fiery as well. Every year, it seems people are more and more invested into this level of rugby, which is exactly what we want to see.
Yeah, it kind of came out of nowhere, didn't it? We did the previous podcast, the draft podcast. If you haven't seen that, by the way, do go and check it out. We had great fun selecting our draft teams between us two and Will Roberts of all the players that have been selected by the Premiership academies for those senior academy contracts this year. Had great fun doing that, but it seemed like we had all the time in the world, didn't it? And then suddenly the season is upon us, and it's all systems are go. And actually, first weekend of the season, this weekend just gone, big weekend coming up, and then in this middle period that we're recording in now, we've got the Ace League starting, we've got the Continental Tires Under 18 Schools Vars gets going today, tomorrow, Thursday as we look at it now, and then a couple of weeks time the Cup starts, and then we're into St Joe's Festival and all sorts. It comes at you thick and fast.
Yeah, it's busy. It's a really busy time of the year, but it's that's exactly what we want. As much coverage as possible, as much exposure as possible, as many live streams as we can get down. We've got the numbers now. We can get all over the country. As Richard, the director, is just about to head off to Merchiston on the long journey to drop off some equipment, and that festival as well is on the horizon.
Well, do you know what Richard is doing? It's a good chance for us to talk about it. He's going up to Merchiston Castle to install our automated camera system for them, where we're giving this is something for all schools out there. If you're listening, we give you 3 cameras that you can set up on any field that you choose. Oftentimes, many schools have selected first team rugby pitch, the main AstroTurf, and the sort of premier location for netball, be that the sports hall or outdoors, but any fields you want really. And then we can broadcast all your games. It goes into a secure, very very well GDPR controlled hub for your school, where people will subscribe to watch, and you can control who those subscribers are, so that it's all very much secure within your system. So it's just a way of keeping your school community in touch with what's going on in terms of sports at your school, and every single game that takes place on that field can be broadcast. You can also record your training and obviously not turn the cameras live, and you get all sorts of analysis tools as well. Do get in touch. We'll get into greater detail on that, but certainly something for everyone to consider. And Richard is off to Merchiston Castle to install that system right up there in Edinburgh. We've also got live coverage on the YouTube channel, as we have done for the last few years. That sort of big set piece event, live broadcast coverage, and big one coming up this Saturday, Wellington College against Whitgift. Really special game, actually, Wilf. It's the Seb Adena and Alule Memorial Game. Sadly took his own life a number of years ago now. An old boy of both schools, started at Whitgift, moved to Wellington College for his sixth form. He was part of the Harlequins Academy, and at the time of his tragic passing, he was at Richmond RFC on dual reg. They've set up a foundation in his name, Seb's Foundation. You can check it out. Actually, it's sebsfoundation.com or .org. One of the two. Do go check it out online. It's they're doing some really good stuff to sort of help support young people. But obviously, great cause, but a great fixture as well.
Yeah, no, it's a huge game. Lots of talk about Whitgift coming into the season, but Wellington have sort of started like a house on fire. And again, it seems they escape prolonged conversation about how good they're going to be every year. And it has, in truth, been a couple of years, maybe 4 or 5, since they've been at the very, very top of the schoolboy game, but they really could be back there this year. It'd be really impressive to see how they get on against a Whitgift team that didn't have a fantastic weekend, but there's more to do with the game they played against Sedbergh than meets the eye. So, yeah, it'll be really exciting to see what goes on. And, of course, every time Wellington hosts a game, it's fantastic. So,
yeah, we're looking forward to that one. It's going to be massive. That's all on the Next Gen Live YouTube channel, you know where to find it, but we're going to have loads of promo going out over the course of the next few days. It's going to be an absolute crack. I can't wait to see that one. We've been live there for the past couple of years with that game, and it never lets you down. Hopefully a little bit of late summer sun, although not too much, because this head of mine needs looking after, but otherwise should be absolutely spectacular. And there's no better place actually early season than Big Side at Wellington College. They've got the beautiful pavilion with a big canopy overhanging, and most importantly of all, from my perspective, an incredible lunch spread. It's always one of the games that you want to get yourself to nice and early. So Wellington, they also made the top 5 this weekend. So shall we start at the weekend just gone? And just have a little reflection on what we made of that opening weekend overall. As a sort of general sense, what was your overall feeling from that opening weekend of the season? I mean, some incredible games.
Big scores was sort of the defining feature of it. There wasn't a lot of nerves coming into that sort of pre-season period. When we were down at Kingswood or at Hartpury, there was certainly some rust to be shaken off by a couple of those sides. But games which we always pick games that we think are going to be either big derbies or they're going to be closely fought contests. But this week, there were just a couple of blowouts. And it wasn't expected as much. But I think there's quite a clear tier forming at the very top of this season's schoolboy game, where there's going to be 4 or 5 standouts, which is good. Whereas, last season there were maybe only 1 or 2 who could challenge each other at the very top end. Is thinking of like Sedbergh and Harrow, who really did run away with things at that stage of the season. Brighton College, of course, had really great moments for them, good tournament wins for them, but across the season it was only a couple of sides who could really take each other on in earnest. And I don't think that's going to be the case this year, which is good to see. We've yet to see a lot of schools really open up their season, but from what the evidence so far shows is it'll be a more competitive field at the top end.
I always find this time of the season really interesting because you don't know anything at this point in time. I mean, I suppose it's obvious to say, isn't it? It's the start of the season, so it's an unknown. But because, you look at the Premiership rugby season or the Premiership football season, and yes, there's a lot of player turnover. There might be new managers, there might be whatever else. But fundamentally, the bulk of your squad is the same as it was last year. So you kind of have a sense of where teams are going to be. Schools rugby, school sport in general, that's not the case. You know that at least, and often much more than 50%, but at least 50% of your team has gone over the course of the summer. So you're starting afresh, and we make our assumptions. A team like, and we'll get into them a little bit, but a team like Northampton School for Boys, we can make a fairly good assessment pre-season that they're going to be very good because they're stuffed full of Northampton Saints academy lads, a number of England internationals. That's a side that should be good, but equally you can't be certain with other sides. There's a team like Sedbergh we generally think are going to be one of the top sides around. By the evidence of the first weekend, they are going to be one of the top sides around, but we don't know until we see the opposition play a few other games, so we can get a sense of what the kind of ladder or the league table, unofficial as it might be, kind of looks, so that you can make those comparisons, because we're shooting blind in the first 2 weeks. I was you'll probably see it by the time this comes out, our top 5 teams of the weekend, and making an assessment on whether a team has played well or has played badly or has had something beyond what was expected or below what was expected, it's incredibly difficult at this time of year. It's a real judgment call a lot of the time based on what you expect. And to go back to the team we sort of started this all off with, and one we'll get into, Wellington College away at Berkhamsted, they, 54-7, something like that?
Yeah, absolutely.
No notes, by the way. 54-7. Just knew it. But 54-7 away at Berkhamsted, who finished 3rd in the Daily Mail Trophy last year. So does that mean Berkhamsted didn't play very well? Does that mean Wellington College played brilliantly? Does that mean that Wellington College are arguably the best team in the country this year? We don't know yet. But I'd like to get your take on this, because mine is, well, I'll tell you mine. I'd like to get your take on that.
Well, it's tough for Berkhamsted. They had a good season, really good, of course, in the Daily Mail, as you said, but also really good, strong showing at St Joe's College Festival, only seen off by the eventual winners, St Michael's over from Ireland. Really strong showing throughout. And yet that opening day, I'm sure they were pretty disappointed. But again, it is opening day, and different sides have had different lengths of pre-season as well. So a school like Berkhamsted, which is, of course, got a great rugby team, but it's a big old institution, and getting that whole school off the ground every summer must be a huge operation, Whereas Wellington, the rugby season is very short, and I think they probably put quite a lot of emphasis onto this season. I think they know what they have, which is a really strong squad, which still has a lot of space to grow into the year.
Yeah.
But I'm interested to see where Wellington will go. I'm not going to write off anyone this early either. So Berkhamsted, that they would have lost a few big names last year, and it's tough to rebound after such a good season for a school that isn't a heavy hit every single year, even if they do have a great history. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond. They've got a big game this weekend as well against Warwick, which is a tough test for them, again at home. So,
do you know what though? That's exactly the sort of game that I was mentioning there, where we'll actually learn a lot more just as these opening weeks develop, because Warwick obviously played Bromsgrove in that opening weekend. Two sides that are traditionally the strongest in their part of the country and have at points in time been the strongest, couple of sides in the country at large. Berkhamsted probably, generally speaking, sit on about the level that Warwick and Bromsgrove do. So how they do against Warwick, who clearly had a great result at the weekend, will tell us an awful lot about where both sides sit. But
just a really good Bromsgrove team as well.
Yeah, it's a very good Bromsgrove side, I think. But to go back to the point we were talking about before, I think Wellington College, on that evidence, and I know it's only one game, I think that is a very, very big statement, and I think they are going to be pushing very hard this year. They could well be the best team in the country. I think they'll certainly be top three, could be higher, which is not that outlandish. Wellington are often in the top three, but I think they look a very strong team at the moment. We'll find out in the live game against Whitgift at the weekend.
We have this narrative where NSB is this fantastic story, because obviously
that's amazing.
It's it's like an early ace college sort of setup going on there. That it's how some people choose to look at it, as if they are like the blueprint for an ace college, where it's stocked full of Northampton Saints players. If you're playing academy rugby for Northampton and you get to that sort of under 16 age, they start to say, well, have you looked around NSB? It's beautiful. You should come and have a look. You should do the entrance exam. You should see what happens. And they've managed to stockpile this incredible age group where they've got 16 or so Saints Academy players across the under 17 and the under 18s, which is very obviously enough for an entire team of Saints Academy players if they can juggle them round. And they've started really well. I really thought maybe Sedbergh might be letting up, because they did lose some big players, but as we were discussing earlier, Angus, they actually were a slightly younger side than I think they gave them credit for. And then
slightly younger, but also players in key positions that were young. The Jack brothers, 10 and 15, now playing 10 and 12, or at least they were last weekend. Yeah, as we've spoken about in other places, running a team as a lower 6-10 is tricky, and so that year's experience could make a big difference. But as you say, on NSB, it's an incredible story. You've got these, and it goes through the age groups, and it's a real sign for me of success breeds success in a sense, because if a school starts to develop a reputation for being a strong rugby school, then people who display strong rugby aptitude want to go there. Be that state school, be that independent school. It's rarely been seen to this extent, and it's incredible. I mean, you go back to 2013, I think it was, NSB got to a Schools Cup final, and that was really the first time they'd been on the marker on that front. Courtney Laws had gone there, but they'd not had huge success in his sides, or certainly not this level of success. And they've been building and building and building, and then this last sort of post-COVID era, they've just exploded. 3 under-15 Schools Cup finals on the trot, winning the first and the third of those, and those 3 year groups are now the first 15, because they largely use their under-16s in the first 15 as well. They're under-16s, by the way, who also got to the School Sport magazine final last year. So you've got this upper sixth that are national champions, a lower sixth that got to the final. and then an under-16s cohort that are national champions. So it's incredible.
I'm really excited to see where they go. I mean, obviously the biggest prize is the Continental Tire Schools Cup, and they'll push themselves really hard in that. But yeah, see, week by week, we're hoping to get a good look at them from our perspective as well. We'd like to see as much of their rugby being on the old live streams as possible, because they could create some really special stuff. They know each other so well, because even when you're 1 year apart at school level, you're not entirely separate to how the year above you or the year below you does. And as soon as you enter that under 16 category, it feels like you leave the rest of the school behind you, and then you're a part of that 3-year training group. Yeah. So as they've brought in these new players who have been really quickly...
I don't want to do them a disservice. They've not brought in loads of players. Like, largely speaking, these guys have come through the ranks. It's an amazing story. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I mean, help me out if you can think of any examples here. Can you think of a time where, outside of the ace colleges, where a state school, certainly, I mean, we were right at the start of the season, I appreciate, but where a state school has been in the mixer for being thought of as the best team in the country? RGS High Wycombe? And
it's interesting because it's not just state institution, it's even outside of the sort of Big 5 to Big 10. Yeah. Like when the things that Quegs Wakefield achieved last season with, NSB, a largely homegrown contingent. Most of their first team, almost all of their first team, were there from year 7 upwards, which was amazing to see. But again, High Wycombe had that fantastic team over the last couple of years. They've largely dissipated now and headed off to universities, but that was a great couple of year groups. But even then, they made it to some big finals, but they didn't challenge at the very sort of top 3, top 4 schools in the country like NSB are doing so far this season, and may well do as we cross through into the winter months.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of RGS High Wycombe sides. I can think of John Fisher sides where they've been very, very good. They've won big titles, stretching back over the last, well outside the memories of anyone that's even playing in these games right now. But over the last 20, 25, 30 years, I can think of a couple of teams from them. Campion were national champions in round about the turn of the century. But the fact that I'm using a phrase like the turn of the century, it just highlights what NSB are doing. It's incredible. And obviously their performance of the weekend, what was it, 57-7?
Yeah.
No notes again, guys. No notes again. 57-7 against Mill Hill, who are an absolutely outstanding side, Mill Hill, and they will cause a lot of teams problem. NSB are...
Mill Hill have got England internationals and almost double figures of academy players in that first team, and NSB put 50 points past them, which is a fantastic result for them.
No, it's massive. It's absolutely massive. Anyway, there's a vague framework within us discussing these two sides so far, which is we're looking at the top 5 school teams of the weekend. I'm sure you've probably seen it online already by the time you're watching or listening to this, but obviously every week at the end of the weekend, we do our top 5 school teams of the weekend. This week, it's me that selects it, so I'd be interested, Wilf, if you've got anyone you disagree with here or who you'd like to get in the team, but I'll tell you who's in it and I'll tell you why I went for them, and then I'd like to hear from you if there's anyone you might have considered. So my top 5 this week were Harrow, Northampton School for Boys, Sedbergh, Sherburn and Wellington College. We've already discussed NSB and Wellington College. Sedbergh, I'll quickly, we've touched on them. I'll quickly run through what they did. They travelled down to Whitgift. I think it was, what was the final score? 52-19, is that right? This is no notes again, by the way.
Yeah, gosh, I'm really getting tested here as well. I've got the notes in front of me and I've still not nailed on to...
52-19? Yeah, it is 52-19.
Yeah, it was
52-19. There we go. I'm a nerd. But anyway, they fantastic win down at Whitgift. There's actually a load of context to that as well that we'll touch on when we look towards that Wellington Whitgift game when we look ahead to next weekend. But that's why Sedbergh are in there, because that's just Whitgift were President's Cup winners a couple of weeks back. Yeah, second year on the trot they've done that, and Sedbergh just absolutely flying into that first game of the season. Fantastic, and really pleased for Sam Moore as well, who's obviously taken over in running the rugby program there since Simon Mulholland left in April, and that is such a big gig. Really high pressure. I'm sure he would have put a lot of pressure on himself after the success of Noxie. So really pleased for Sam Moore. That's an absolute dream start for him. Harrow with a cracking victory against Clifton College. Now this one I actually do I remember this off the top of my head? 41-26.
Harrow taking on Clifton College is 41-26 indeed. Yes, well done.
Yes. Here we go. Right, we might have to introduce a quiz element to the podcast this week. But again, Harrow and Clifton, two of the best teams in the country over the last couple of years. There was a sense for me that whichever side won that was probably going to make the top five, just because it was such a significant game right at the start of the season. Two massive teams. And then Sherburn, who beat Millfield now, what was that, 26-19? Is that right?
No, I have.
You don't have that.
There are two Millfield results.
Two Millfield results. Well, this is why Sherburn make it in. So Millfield put out two teams at the weekend. Probably the more senior of the teams travelled to Llandovery College, and Llandovery put in a great performance over in Wales to win that one. But Millfield also sent a team to Sherburn. A bit of a mix of first and second team, but it was a first 15 fixture. They were treating it as a first 15 fixture, and good on Millfield for doing that, because they could quite easily have said that was a second team and kind of try and slink away into the shadows with that a little bit. They didn't, and so hats off to them. But bigger hats off to Sherburn, who haven't beaten Millfield this century. And that's as far back as my stats go. I mean, it may well be even longer than that, but they haven't beaten Millfield this century. It's an absolutely massive result for them, because at times in the last sort of decade, maybe, Sherburn have had some really, really good teams. They've had a couple of quiet years, but to beat Millfield, first game of the season, what a rocket ship of a start that is. That's just like, if there were any little niggling doubts in the back of anyone's minds, that is just fuel for the entire season of just, first game, we beat Millfield, well done us. And I just thought that's the sort of result that almost the top five was made for, where it's just something you don't see coming, and they do it, they perform. They were so excited about it. I saw some of the clips of them coming off the field, and they were just running back into the sort of grateful, glorious arms of their supporters. It was just brilliant to see, and that did it for me. So that was the top five. I've picked the sort of official top five: Harrow, NSB, Sedbergh, Sherburn, Wellington. But anyone you'd have sort of wanted to sneak in there?
Well, just a couple of midweek fixtures. Obviously, we cover all of those. Just give them, because it's tough. Because the thing is, when you move up to university sport, the traditional time for your fixtures is on a Wednesday, and they're given a lot of precedence. And it's perhaps something that the school game could consider is starting to shift those big games to midweek and to Fridays, and then leaving the weekends open for the Premiership. It's something that's done in other countries. So
that you get weekends off.
Is that so?
You do comms on Wednesday afternoons. So.
It's something that a lot of other nations have started to move towards, which is giving precedence to the top end of the sport and not taking any eyes off that by putting others. So, for example, the AFL, for example, in Australia, you can watch every single game because they don't, or the NRL, you can watch every game because they never put two on at the same time.
Never overlap, yeah.
And the idea of moving school games to Friday night and to Wednesdays and stuff, and giving it its own platform, is good to see. And I'm all for encouraging that. With City of Oxford College going into the ACE campaign, they beat Gordon's 31-19, which is a huge result for them. We'll wait and see what that is, how much that is on Gordon's and the changes that they've had, because they've lost a lot of players this year. But the Ace is starting proper this season. That was just a friendly game to tee them up. But as well, the Campion put 40 points on the Hayes, which are the Hayes is a school that's really growing in its pedigree, and they've got good partnerships with Ealing Trowfinders in there. But Campion performing excellently well there, and then some more big results with King's Worcester putting 50 on.
Yeah, well, do you know what?
Cathedral.
Kings Worcester have had a flying start because they played Solihull at the weekend as well. I think it was 44-0, something like that. So they haven't conceded a point in their opening 2 games. They've scored the better part of 100. I think they might be a sort of a little bit of a dark horse to keep an eye on, because they've got cracking fly half Mason, excellent player, but they've also got Henry Horsfall, England international, in the back row. So they're a team I think to have a look out for. I tell you what, there are a few teams I debated sort of chucking into the mixer. Cranley had a great result the weekend. Really good result. But do you know what? They were so good last year as well. I'm really intrigued to see how they go. I just can't pick where that Dulwich College side sits at the moment. My hope is that they bounce back really quickly, because I really want to see a good Dulwich College side. Schools rugby sort of feels right when you've got a big Dulwich team, you've got a big Tunbridge team that just sort of...
It's tough for Dulwich because they've lost their starting centre partnership. They had a fly half in Ali Murray he practically played fly half for 3 years in that first team, and now he's left. They've lost a flying fullback as well, and a fair bit of physicality in the pack. They had a very senior team. They performed really well at Sedbergh Tens last summer at the back
really
end.
did, yeah.
And that was a fantastic way for a lot of those players to say goodbye. But a lot of them did say goodbye. And they've now got Harrow up next this weekend as well.
It's a hell of a tough start, isn't it? I mean, that's 2 sides that were certainly up there with the very best last year, and they're probably going to be up there with the very best this year. So actually, there were some really impressive performances, I thought, all around London. There were some really good ones. KCS Wimbledon going down to Hampton. They were just absolutely brilliant. Tiffin had a really good result. Tiffin don't often get a shout out, but they deserve one. They were absolutely brilliant there. Ipswich were obviously very good away at Gresham's. A bit of a what was it? What's they call the derby in the football? Norwich Ipswich, is it the tractor derby, something like that? Something like that. And that's fundamentally what Gresham's versus Ipswich is, isn't it? So good effort that from Ipswich. You got like the Lees still playing really well. Really like what they're doing. Wondered how they'd go without James Pater now that at fullback, now that he's gone, but that was really impressive. I'm missing out loads and loads of others, but there were some really top performances all throughout the weekend. You know, St Peter's York going up to RGS Newcastle, a city that is alive with rugby at the moment as a result of the Red Bulls takeover at Newcastle, and St Peter's York looking absolutely fantastic there. So some incredible performances in that opening weekend. Actually, one game that I just want to very briefly touch on, Brighton College as well. Really tight win away at Hurstbeard Point College just down the road. That was an important early momentum builder for Brighton, because if they'd gone down there, they would have been annoyed with themselves, having had all that momentum from last year to then get stung on the opening day would have been a killer. But they got the job done.
It's a big game for Hurstbeard Point. That nice local derby, but that is a shame for them because they played well. But it's good to see that Brighton have managed to kick on after last season. They've still got some of their big players in big moments who are still there. But they did lose. They lost the core of that side. They lost Alex Stubbs, and then they lost a few of the strong forwards. They've lost both the co-captains as well. So it will be interesting to see how they regather. But that's just the way. That's how it is. Some schools escape it and then go on to have particularly strong seasons in bursts. But teams like Brighton, which have been sort of at the top end of the school game for about 10 years now, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, they will hope to kick on after a pretty unprecedented season for them last year. You could forgive them for slowing down a bit, but there are guys who can now call themselves Roslyn Park winners. They can call themselves, Sedbergh Tens winners, and now they're having their own season to make their own impact and sort of move out of the shadow of some of those really important players. Because Brighton had such a cult of personality in that first team. That lots of guys who, a lot of them have been overlooked by academies and maybe hadn't been given opportunities at the top end of the under-18 game, and they became sort of heroes to the school. And now there's lots of other young guys trying to get their way in there.
Do you know what we need to do as well at some stage? We need to get the Brighton coaching staff on the podcast, because I one question for them and one question only, which is how long did the recovery from the celebrations take? Because they were it was back to back. I think
they're on very good form at the Sebetens.
They just the trouble that I think they just kept winning things they weren't expecting to win, and so the celebrations just had to keep rolling on.
There are more pubs than men in Sedbergh, which didn't help at all.
Well,
but it's just they were already in very good spirits when we got up there from Roslyn. So, yeah.
No, exactly. Well, and well earned as well. They've spent so much time and so much effort poured into these achievements. They deserve it. And there was a stat that came out. We sort of looked into it, and we believe that Nick Boy is the first coach to win the St Joseph's Festival, the Howden Roslin Park National School Sevens, and the Sedbergh Tens as a coach, and to win the St Joseph's Festival and Roslin Park National School Sevens as a player as well. Sedbergh Tens didn't exist when he was a player, which is why he didn't win that. That's quite an achievement.
I mean, if anyone would like to challenge that and claim that they've also done it,
if anyone's got better stats, probably, do you know what? Probably the closest person that I can think of off the top of my head would be someone like Sam Howard, who obviously did so well as a coach at Dulwich College, but also was the man steering the ship from fly half when they had some of those great sides in the 90s. But I'll tell you what, you'd be hard pressed. John Mallett, maybe. He's certainly seen it all and done it all down at Millfield. Anyway, that's a whole different podcast episode, so we'll get into that. But yeah, that was the top five: Harrow NSB, Sedbergh, Sherburn, and Wellington College. Get in touch with us. I'd love to know who you thought stood out in the opening weekend. Next weekend, right? We're going to try something that we've never tried before, which is every week for years now. I've picked 10 to watch for my Thursday preview of the weekend's games. For context, listeners and viewers, it's Tuesday, so really haven't got my head in the game for next weekend yet. But we're going to try and live pick the 10 to watch, which you'll then see on in Thursday's preview. But I suppose if we do it like this, you'll get a bit of the thinking why some of these fixtures make it into the 10 to watch, because it's not necessarily about the best team against the best team, although obviously that does make for a good watch. It's also about local rivalry, derbies, form, whether we or I historically have been interested in whether a side's form is what I think it is, or whether this game against such and such a team might tell me more about that form, and therefore that makes them a big game to watch. So it's there's a lot that goes into it, and we're going to try a little bit of a new format on it. So let's see where we get to.
Yeah, so we've managed to cut down the fixtures already, because we're not going to debate all 500 or so that are going on across the
although
week.
You will see a line on each and every one of those fixtures in the preview this weekend.
But we have managed to narrow it down to around 30 to then from that.
It'd be a quick podcast episode then. just the 30 to
just
debate.
The 30 fixtures to choose 10 of.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've got 3 that jump out off the page for me. Starting on Friday with Clifton College versus Clondoveri College. Clondoveri obviously beating Millfield last weekend. Clifton losing, but sense perhaps that they might have been a little bit on the bus in the early stages against Harrow last weekend. Obviously, Clondoveri traditionally one of the best teams in Wales, and Clifton College over the last 3 or 4 years in the same position here in England. So for me, the fact that it's Anglo-Welsh, the fact that they're two sort of really top sides, the fact that Clifton are often packed full of Welsh players as well.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I feel like that's just a no-brainer. That's got to be in.
And they both scored 4 tries apiece in their respective games. It's just that Clondoveri managed to keep Millfield down to 17 points, whereas Harrow obviously ran away with it and notched up 40-odd. But yeah, that is going to be a great game. And the Anglo-Welsh games, there aren't nearly enough of them in the schoolboy category.
I love them. I absolutely love them.
It's nice to see Whitchurch returning to St Joe's College this year after a year or two away. But yeah, there's not enough of that Anglo-Welsh in senior rugby or in junior rugby, in my opinion.
Nice. So Clifton Clondoveri is in the 10 to watch. The other one on Friday night that I've got straight in is Ipswich against Northampton School for Boys at Ipswich Rugby Club. Obviously, we've spoken about NSB and what they did at the weekend, but Ipswich, as sort of briefly mentioned, were absolutely outstanding up at Gresham's as well. So that, for me, is a massive, massive clash. And again, I think I probably put NSB as favourites for that. But if we thought Mill Hill was a test, I think this is probably another level of a test again, because Ipswich got to that President's Cup final. Ipswich probably been more used to playing over the last few years big games of this nature than Mill Hill are. Mill Hill possibly have got more sort of academy players in the team, but possibly less used to these high-pressure school games. So I think for me, that's a game that just goes straight in there.
The proper yardstick for Ipswich as well, having lost probably their 3 best players all out the door with the whole Crofts University, and then they've lost Seattle Walter and Tadaro to professional contracts. So very different Ipswich team with Matt Searle, the director of rugby, has had more time to sort of stamp his authority on things. He knows Ipswich Rugby Club very well as well. So yeah, that'll be a different... Ipswich Rugby Club will be a different venue for NSB because it's a proper old school...
It's proper rugby club.
Rugby club, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, I've lost many a game at Ipswich RFC as an away player. And then the third game that for me is an absolute lock-in is Wellington College against Whitgift. Not just because it's live here on Next Gen Live, you'll be able to catch that on the YouTube channel, and not just because it's such a special occasion with the Sebadena and Alule memorial element to it, and we're going to have Stasha Long. He's an ambassador for the charity on CoComs as well, so we'll hear a lot about Seb's story there, and certainly in more articulate terms than I can give across right now. But from a rugby perspective, I'm just fascinated by this one, because obviously Wellington, outstanding against Berkhamsted. Whitgift had a difficult outing against Sedberg, but we mentioned there was a bit of context to that, and it wasn't actually as dark a hole for Whitgift as it might appear at first glance.
Well, they were level at the break, which, when you look at the final result, seems strange. They were tied up at 17 apiece, and then second half just went Sedberg's way. They've got a very deep squad, and it's a long way to travel. It's a difficult journey, so you can't hold all of that against Whitgift. There was so much talk going into the season about them. A lot of sort of younger guys who dial into what Next Gen offer were chatting a lot about Whitgift, and they wanted us to give them their fair due of attention before the season. So, yeah, it's always important to highlight games that matter this much and have so much context behind them. But also, that's going to give the game something special about it as well. Something, a bit more passion into the fixture because of how important the day is for both of the schools.
Yeah, massively. I think it's a great fixture. It'll be a really interesting one, both off field for what it means, but also on field for the quality of rugby I know we'll see, because both teams play incredible rugby. But also just for the wider picture of the season, where do both of these sides sit? And I think by the end of the 70 minutes there, we'll know an awful lot. Right, that's 3, which leaves 7 slots open
for about 26 remaining options. Yeah,
I'm going to pitch for a fixture that I fully expect not to make it, but I still feel it's worthy of a pitch, which is my old school Uppingham hosting Oundle. I'll tell you why. A lot of the time people think that Uppingham Oakham is the big fixture up in Rutland, and it is in a lot of ways. They're 5 miles apart, massive local derby. Oakham for sure, it's their biggest game, but for a long time Uppingham v Oundle was the big fixture, and it was the one that people would, not that I advise this kids, but people would try and get out of stuff to make sure that they were on the touchlines for, and all that sort of stuff. It was always a massive game. And Uppingham had a really good showing against Denstone College, just lost out 2019 in week 1. Oundle drew with Bedford on the Friday night. So both sides arrived probably thinking, okay, we're in the mixer here as far as the season goes. I think that's a really interesting one just for the derby element to it, but also for the fact that both sides are probably looking at their opening weekend and going, okay, not quite what we wanted, but not too shabby actually.
Yeah, too right. There's so many derbies this weekend. That's sort of a feature of it. Is there's, of course, with how the fixture lists work, a lot of the schools are obviously based close together, and they often play the schools around them. But this is the first time I've gone through a list and I've gone, oh yeah, that's a huge game. That's probably the most important game of the season for that school. And I've said that about 10 times on the way through this list.
Yeah, it's quite there's quite impressive few. Right, chuck me a fixture out. Let's see where it sits.
So this is the list.
Tell you what,
so you know,
give me 3 fixtures.
Just so you know, as a school, we'll go through this whole list, but we were considering, upwards of 50, 60 fixtures before we got into this. But the 3 on the list here, we talked about Berkhamsted already.
Yeah.
So they're taking on Warwick this weekend. Bromsgrove are taking on Sir Thomas Riches after their first round defeat. They're heading to Gloucester. They're receiving the side from Gloucester for that one.
Tommy's, by the way, you went down to Marlborough College and won as well. Massive effort that one.
So Bromsgrove could be in trouble there. Cheltenham College taking on Monmouth. It's an unbelievable Cheltenham College side. A lot of the younger guys who have jumped up. And then a big Bristol derby, one of 2 to talk about today, is Collegiate against QEH.
Yeah, big derby.
Game.
Big derby, that. Collegiate looking good as well at the weekend. Didn't quite get the result they wanted, but performed really well. Yeah, I think Collegiate are a side to keep an eye on this year. Big game for QEH. They'd want to make a big dent there, but I think they'll be hard pressed to topple Collegiate because Collegiate are looking good.
QEH though, really good performance at Kingswood. They had to play Millfield in their opening game, and they did really well. It was an interesting time for them. Cheltenham College have got this really young group of talented Gloucester Academy players who are now moving into upper sixth. Their fly half Zach Nicholson is still in year 12 somehow, having played fly half almost or fullback all season for them last year. So Cheltenham College are looking in really good shape. Jack Shave at second row for them is a monster. And they're going to play Monmouth, which is again
always a good clash. That, like, as you know, I like a cross-border clash.
The tough one for Dulwich, as we were talking about, they've got to take on Harrow this weekend.
It's brutal.
And then there's another good local game where Framlingham College taking on Norwich.
Well, again, I keep calling it a tractor derby, but Suffolk Norfolk. I'm sure. Do you know what? Someone answered on a postcard. I am sure that's what the Ipswich Norwich game is called, the tractor derby.
Haileybury taking on Stamford. We're going to see a lot of Haileybury this season. They've got some really interesting multi-sport double headers coming up with us.
I think that's a really interesting game as well because Stamford went up, I think it was 8-5 to Stoke. Just such a close game. Haileybury, I think it was 26-23 victory over Felsted away from home. Tight games against good opposition opening weekend. Went different ways for each of them, but I think that's a really interesting clash. Stamford, by the way, shout out to Mr. Laventure of Stamford, who after 25 years has stepped away. Jordan Murphy, former Leicester Tigers director of rugby, former British and Irish Lion as well, actually, played with our next podcast guest, actually, who's coming up next week, Charlie Hodgson, on the 2005 Lions tour. Just in case you're wondering what's happening next week. Jordan Murphy coming in as head of rugby at Stamford now, so some really interesting changes there. So it's that's an interesting fixture that could sneak in, A
few more derbies. Hurstpere Point, who narrowly lost to Brighton, are taking on Seaford, who drew with St Joe's down in London. Those two sides met, but now Seaford just travelling down to Hurstpere Point as well.
Different time of the season for this one as well. This has traditionally been a little later on. I remember getting absolutely drenched in late November once at Seaford for that game.
Couple more local derbies as well. Kes Birmingham, Kes Stratford. That is a game that means quite a lot to both those schools.
Big one for both.
And then Kingswood taking on Bristol Grammar School, which is Bristol Grammar School got a really ambitious rugby programme at the moment. And Kingswood, of course, Linegarless, but they had a really good pre-season showing.
Went down to Cheltenham last weekend, won 24-21. Like that's some serious work from them.
Kings Worcester, we talked about, had a good start to the season. They're taking on Bloxham, who are still without Junior Denny after got injured in the summer.
Big game, that. Big game.
But they were scoreless when we took them in on the live stream at Kingswood, but they have a bit more to offer.
Yeah, but I like a 0-0. You know me. Bring it back to 1960s international rugby. Those 3-3 draws, they're the ones for me.
Merchiston Castle up in Scotland taking on Dollar Academy. That's probably the pick of the bunch of the fixtures in Scotland this weekend.
Massive, and great news for all the Merchiston Castle supporters and parents as well, because they'll be able to watch that one. They'll be able to get subscribed up. In fact, I believe Merchiston Castle are actually subscribing on their behalf, which is very
fantastic. Very that game will be brought to you live by the AI cameras with their tri-lens focus. You won't notice the difference if we were up there ourselves. So it'll be great. Mill Hill are taking on Gordons. Mill Hill have had a tough start to the year. So have Gordons, however, though. This is their last sort of showing before they play Ace this midweek.
Yeah,
so it'll be how they do after tomorrow.
It'll be the Gordons Boars side, as they call it. It'll be the sort of in effect the school team rather than the ace team, if that makes sense. So that'll be an interesting one. Yeah.
Oakham Stowe, sort of the other side of that Uppingham Oundle game as well, which is great.
Do you know what? It doesn't even need debating. That's in. Oakham Stowe is massive, absolutely massive. Stowe, as I say, with that really tight win over Stanford, that was a real battle, that one. And I can't actually remember who Oakham played at the weekend, but I'm pretty sure they were on the right side of the result. So cracking effort.
Rugby School, who lost in the opening round of their school season to that overside. They're taking on Bedford, who, as you were talking about, drew with Oundle. So a chance for them to bounce back, and then a big game, Sedbergh against Denston. Very different test for Sedbergh. Denston College, who again that's a side with a big upheaval after last season. They'll have a big change in their first team, and see if they can head up to Sedbergh and challenge them. Sedbergh have already beaten the likes of St Joe's, and of course that big game against Whitgift that we've just been talking about.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting one actually. I think another little lesson in where both sides are. Obviously Denston with that tight win over Uppingham at the weekend, good result. This will be a different sort of test. I think. Well, do you remember a couple of years back, 2-3 years ago maybe, Denston stung Sedbergh, got the victory. And I think it spoiled an unbeaten season for Sedbergh. I can't quite remember the full detail, but
that was a huge win for Denston, and that was a top Denston College side as well. They had some decent amount of England representation a couple of years ago.
Yeah, they were a good team.
Marlborough College, who are back at the St Joe's Festival as well this season, they're taking on Sherborne, which will be a tough game, and then another huge game for Trinity, who are taking on that Cranley side we discussed briefly earlier.
Interesting one. And I think both sides are really excited about this one. Already we're what are we, Tuesday as we record this? I've already seen a load of social media hype from both teams ahead of this one. I think they're really looking forward to it. Cranley, we know are a hell of a side. Trinity obviously had that 2-3 years period where they were just unbelievable, but sort of tailed off a little bit as those players went. I'll be really interested to see how they go this year. That's quite an intriguing one actually.
Radley College against Epsom College as well is also this weekend. That's
straight in.
A historic fixture.
It's straight in as well though, because I am fascinated by this Radley College side. So obviously this upper sixth that they've got, the upper sixth or lower sixth, one of their year groups were under 15 national champions. They've had 2-3 years of really good under 15 sides. So this is the year in many ways for them. So I'm really interested to see how they get on. And obviously Epsom College, fantastic victory at the weekend over St Paul's. They were one of the top sides around last year. They had a little period where I think they played Cranley, Harrow, Brighton, something like that, and it just top sides they were facing, they just didn't quite get over the line against those ones, and it almost made their season look like it had been so-so. But the reality was they were an outstanding side. They just couldn't quite topple those very best ones. Radley, I think, are going to be a bit of a dark horse in terms of pushing into those upper echelons this year. And this will be a proper test for them. This will be a massive test for Epsom as well. Really, really cool fixture.
Skinner's taking on John Fisher as well this weekend. John Fisher, of course, we're back at the John Fisher Festival as well this weekend. Skinner's be a good game for them. And then St John's Leatherhead taking on RGS High Wycombe. Be interesting to see how High Wycombe shape up. A lot of change for them in the last few years, but they've had a couple of seasons of top performances. I think probably the level inside that camp has just been dragged up by some really, really talented players. And we
didn't see anything of RGS High Wycombe last week. So it'll be interested to see what they're like. St John's Leatherhead were immense against Emmanuel. And no disrespect to Emmanuel, but this should be a step up. But such was the level that John Fisher were playing at that makes this a really interesting fixture. I sort of shooting blind, you'd say RGS are probably narrow favourites. But given the level of performance last week from St John's, it's a fixture with a fair bit of intrigue.
The Judd take on Tonbridge as well. Big fixture for the Judd, who claimed victory in that.
Do you know what, mate? Ago. That's another one that for me just goes in. They share a town, and forever and a day, Tonbridge, they largely didn't play each other. because Tunbridge were the big public school, one of the great teams in the entire country, year on year on year for hundreds and hundreds of years, and the Judd were the state school that weren't a particularly great rugby school. And in the last 5 years, the Judd's rugby has just absolutely flown up. It's been absolutely.
I think they've always had a good junior section. Like I'm talking more close to under 12s, 13s, 14s, 15s. They've always had tough junior sections. I remember playing those fixtures at St Joe's, and the Judd were a tough opposition to come against. And then they sort of faded away as you got towards under 18, when perhaps some of the best players would move on to sort of other public school institutions.
Probably Tunbridge.
Yeah, exactly. But that's just not how it is anymore. Yeah, and it's great to see, and it'd be really interesting to see if they can challenge Tunbridge, who themselves have sort of not faded as a rugby team, because they've got plenty of talent in there, but they don't hold that same sort of stature that they did before these two sides met in regular fixtures. And I think it's a testament that it would be absurd to suggest they don't meet anymore.
Yeah, I think it's
under 18.
It's a massive, massive game, and state versus private. It's got that element to it. You've got the small fish against the big fish. For Tunbridge, it's a sort of, without heaping pressure on, it's a sort of must-win internally, because everyone that comes and plays them from that local area wants to knock one on them, because they're the big school. They're probably the biggest school in Kent in terms of rugby pedigree, and they've got sides that just every week want to come after them. I think this is massive. Can't wait. Love that fixture.
Two more fixtures to go through, both for North of England. St Peters York, who had such a good victory against RGS Newcastle last week, taking on Stonyhurst. Chance for them to go 2 from 2 start of the season. That'd be great to see. And then Woodhouse Grove take on Barnard Castle. Woodhouse Grove have been a really interesting side the last couple of years, but Barnard Castle, really enjoyed watching them at the 7-10s at the back end last season. And
I like it. Okay, right. Well, I've got 6 in here as definites: Clifton Clondalbury, Ipswich NSB, Wellington College Whitgift, Oakham Stowe, Radley College v Epsom College, and the Judd versus Tunbridge. I'm getting nervous because I've had control of this for so many years, and I'm about to open the floor. We've got 4 fixtures to go. Are there any that are jumping out for you there?
It's very difficult to ignore Merchiston Castle against the Dollar Academy, especially because we really enjoy covering the Scottish schools system.
Early kickoff that as well, 10:45 a.m.
Yeah, good luck to Dollar.
Easy to stay on the bus in that one, but yeah, all right, that's in. I'll take that. Yeah, three more. Right, come on. Who's jumping off the page?
I think perhaps Collegiate QEH. Needs to go in, because that's a proper Bristol derby, and QEH are right in the centre of town. They've got beautiful grounds, but they're travelling just slightly further out of the city to take on Collegiate, and I think that's big Bristol derby. Can't really miss it.
I knew that you'd find a way. You'd find a way to shoehorn Bristol into things.
Well, it's just a huge the 4 Bristol schools.
They used to come and knock on the door when I was at Bristol Uni. He went to Bristol Uni. I don't know if anyone's heard.
But I do love the way that rugby sort of manifests down there, because grammar school are right in the centre of town, so are QEH, and then Collegiate slightly more on the outside, but and Clifton High School as well, also sort of in that circle. I'm going
to. In fact, do you know what? I'll do my own research. I just realised we've not had a look at who Brighton College are playing this weekend. But while I attempt to do my own research, you tell me who else is jumping. I quite liked the sound of Stamford's fixture. Who were they playing again?
Yeah, that should be a good game. They're away from home against Haileybury, and I think that is a big game. Haileybury, especially because we're going to see so much of Haileybury this year in their double headers. They've got a bit of lacrosse and rugby on the live, and as you said, it's a new era for Stamford, really. So it might be exciting to see how their season starts.
Yeah, I'm very tempted to go with that. Any others jumping off the page for you?
Well, there's also Kes Birmingham, Kes Stratford, which is a pretty big derby for them in that part of the world. But also, as we go down the list, tough you don't want to include teams 2 weeks in a row.
Sorry to interrupt you. I've worked out who Brighton College are playing. It's Campion on Friday night. That's a big game, actually. That'd be interesting. Right, I'm gonna lean myself out of shot just for a second, just to have a look at this. Oh, Berkhamsted, Warwick.
Of course, we spoke about it earlier.
Oh dear, we've got to get that in. Sorry, I was just right at the top of the conversation. I've never noted it down. We've got to have Berkhamsted Warwick in there. That's massive. So what have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Goodness, one more to go in.
9. 1 to go in, because you've shoehorned collegiate QEH. Do you know what? This is what happens when I cede control.
Is there a region of the country that hasn't been...
I wouldn't have had that. I would have had something else. But this is why democracy is good, because perhaps the Bristol area was getting ignored.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of rugby down there. You know, we've already talked about Clifton a fair bit. Clifton do get the.
Well, that is true. They do get the lion's share down there. I think looking at this, I would like a northern fixture.
Well, the two biggest ones to pick out were St Peter's York against Stonyhurst and Woodhouse Grove against Barnard Castle.
I like that one.
Woodhouse Grove, Barnard Castle. Of course, it'd be nice to see how Woodhouse Grove really shape up this year. They've had in the past a couple of really, really strong sides.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that fixture. I think, Woodhouse Grove, obviously, you're sort of consistently one of the best in one of the sort of top 20 sides in the country, but definitely one of the best sides. Sort of top 3 in that northern region. I think that's a really interesting one. And Barnard Castle, of course, who have had some of the great teams in schools rugby history, but also have had some really good teams in recent years. And you look at the likes of Guy Pepper and Max Pepper that have come through their ranks. Some really good players as well. What do we think about Sedbergh Denston?
I hesitant to over Sedbergh our early run of the season, but that is a cracking fixture.
You could be right.
Purely because it's another it's the third big team on the bounce to travel up to Sedbergh. None of them have been able to get a result so far. I'd be interested to see what happens when Sedbergh start on the road.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to see. I do agree. We don't want to sort of focus in on the same schools over and over. Or it's a tough one. You see, this is what happens, because I'd have probably sneaked it in, but I'd have sneaked it in at the expense of the horse you're backing. So I am prepared to. I sound reluctant as anything, don't I? But I look. It's not easy for me, but I'm going to let it happen. All right, I'll let it happen. Okay, that's our 10 to watch. Let me see if I can quickly alphabetize this off the top of my head. Berkhamsted versus Warwick, Clifton College versus Llandovery College, Collegiate versus QEH, Ipswich versus Northampton School for Boys, Merchiston Castle against Dollar Academy, Oakham against Stowe, Radley College versus Epsom College, the Judd versus Tunbridge, and Woodhouse Grove versus Barnard Castle, and the one that I've not managed successfully to alphabetize, Wellington College versus Whitgift. But it's because, Wilf, I'm a pro.
It's a headline game.
It's a headline game, exactly. We've got to plug it. We've got a live stream coming up.
I think it's great when the stars align like that, and the biggest game of the weekend is actually on our page.
It's always good fun.
And it is true that probably is the biggest game this weekend. Maybe NSB Ipswich is a big game as well, but I think that Welling Whitgift game is a huge fixture. Yeah,
it's massive. I mean, just think about the great games over the years, great players to come through that game, that those two teams. Yeah, it's going to be an absolute cracker. Right, we've dragged on for ages and ages, but I just want to get a couple of quick thoughts. Ace League is coming up. You're our Ace League guru this year, Wilf. So tell everyone just a little bit about that. It's round one this week for both the boys and the girls.
Yeah, of course.
But a few changes this year.
Well, there's a full explanation on the changes and why exactly they've happened according to the RFU. But basically, they've added 5 more schools to the competition. They've also reformed one of the schools. Brooksby's become Loughborough's ace side under the tutelage of the university. And then they have added 5 more schools in to the competition. And what that's led to is the creation of a first and second tier. The first tier being the highest ranked 6 sides from the north and the highest ranked 6 sides from the south. And then the second tier is the new schools propped up by the bottom half of last year's table. to make two pools of 5 of those tier 2 sides. It's pretty difficult to sort of word it all outwardly in that fashion, but there is a full written explanation. It's much easier when you're looking at the pools, so do check the article out on the website.
Head to the website and you'll be able to work it all out. But
there are some really, really strong fixtures as well, which will also be going out today. While as we record, there's some big games on the opening there, and the women's competition again. Great success last season, Exeter beating Hartpury in that amazing final, and that league has stayed the same. They haven't split it into North and South just yet. A couple more schools on the horizon there. Maybe the likes of Sale College could be joining up into that league at some point, but at the moment it's quite Southern focused, just the way that the Prem clubs have organised themselves in the women's game. So it's a standard season for the women, as you could say, all the way through till February. They'll play block fixtures until we get to the playoffs. Just so we did
low maintenance from a coverage point of view. I like absolutely. The women's Ace League. The men's one is a great competition, but it's 5 rounds through till October, and then we go
October,
again, basically.
So in October there is a championships pool that will be decided. There's also relegation and promotion between the tiers. Those specific details have not yet been released by the RFU, as in how many teams are going to be in the championship pool, and also how many teams are going up and going down from tier 1 to tier 2. So I'll have to wait and see.
See, I might have been a bit of the stick in the mud about ceding a bit of control on my 10 to watch, but I am delighted that someone else is trying to do the maths on working out what on earth is going to be going on there. Fantastic competition, though. Really excited to see that get underway. Also underway, we've got the Continental Tire Schools Vars. That's taking place basically as we speak. If you win your first round game, you progress. Obviously, if you lose your first round game, you go into the bowl competition, which finished up last year in the finals at Ealing Trailfinders. I think it's probably going to be the same this year, but to be announced. And then the cup starts on the week of the 24th. And then it's all full steam ahead towards festival season just before half term. But we'll have plenty of time to chat all of that before we get to that point. We've got plenty coming up over the course of the next few weeks. Most important things to get in your diaries, though, are live stream this Saturday, Wellington College against Whitgift, the Seb Denner and Alule Memorial game. Next podcast is coming out next week as well. Charlie Hodgson is the guest for that, former Saracens, Sale Sharks, England and British and Irish Lions fly half. Quite the player, and he's got quite the tale to tell, which we'll be able to hear as the next podcast drops into your inbox. But for now, that is just about everything. Our top 5 school teams of the weekend from the weekend just gone: Harrow, Northampton School for Boys, Sedbergh, Sherborne and Wellington College. Reasoning outlined in the article on the website, and the first ever live selected 10 to watch is it's not too bad actually, Wilf. I think we're all right with that. Answers on a postcard if you think anyone else should have been in that 10 to watch, but we do like to try and spread it around the country, spread it up and down in terms of those very top games, top teams versus some of those that maybe don't often get a shout out. So while I've given you a bit of a ribbing, I'm actually delighted that Collegiate versus QEH is in there, because it's 2 schools that don't get enough attention. Certainly QEH don't get enough attention. Do some good work down there. But that's everything, Wilf. Hopefully we might hear you on a microphone soon. We won't tell anyone what it might be, but fingers crossed.
Very potential games in the last minute. But it's never too last minute for Next Gen Live. So if you decide with 2 days to go that you'd quite like a game to be streamed, just get us in touch and we'll find a way.
Where there's a will, there's a way. And we've got a big will. We want to get as many games as possible live here on Next Gen Live. We want to see you in action. You don't need to be the number 1 game of the weekend. You just need to be playing any sort of sport. We want to get you live because you deserve it. You deserve to have your time shouted out. Right, we deserve a rest, I believe, Wilf. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you for watching. You know where to find it. You know where to watch. You know where to listen. You know where to find us online. And if you don't, I will be sending out a plasterboard's worth of instructions as to how to do so. So don't you worry too much. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Wilf.